Hi, it's Tom here from Running Physio. I wanted to talk to you today about some interesting research that suggested that we can build strength and endurance in as little as 15 minutes, done 3 times per week. Now, this is great news because a lot of us, we struggle to fit in extensive strength programs into our busy routines. But actually, if we train for as little as 15 minutes, 3 times per week, we can build strength and endurance according to this new research. Now, it's important to take on a key point with this, that the intensity of how we do these exercises is important, as we'll see when we delve into the details of the study. But for a lot of us that are short on time but want to get stronger, this might be a great way of building strength and endurance. And it's what we've been using in clinic for quite a long time with our patients. Because a lot of patients, they're often a little bit overwhelmed by the idea of doing a huge selection of different exercises, or they look at the reps and the sets and the details and it's a bit daunting. But when we say, well, can you give me 15 minutes 3 times a week? Often the answer is yes. So they're more likely to do the exercises and get the positive effects. So let's have a look at this research. It's published in 2018 from Schoenfeld et al. And what they found is that strength training with low volume was as effective as high volume training for increasing strength in trained men. What they did in this study is they instructed the participants to make sure that when they completed the exercises that they were getting to fatigue at between 8 and 12 reps. So they're using this to ensure they're roughly somewhere between about 8 rep max and 12 rep max. And if they weren't hitting fatigue at between 8 and 12 reps, they were instructed to increase the load. And this is what we're suggesting our patients to do. When they're doing the exercises, they need to be tough enough that they're getting to fatigue between 8 and 12 reps. I often use the simple phrase, tough at 10. Keep that exercise really tough at 10 reps. If it's no longer tough to do that 10th rep, increase the load or increase the range of movement, make the exercise more difficult to keep it challenging at roughly that 10th rep. Now, what they found in this study is that if people did this, they could train for as little as 13 minutes 3 times a week for 8 weeks and see improvements in strength and endurance. Hence why we're tending to use these simple 15-minute strength training circuits done 3 times a week that will be effective providing you have the sufficient intensity. Now, as another point to make from this paper, what they found is if your goal is hypertrophy, this does appear to follow a dose-response relationship with volume. So if you want to build muscle bulk, you may need higher training volumes in order to do that. So some interesting research there that helps us when we're trying to plan our patients' programs. As I said, I would tend to use a simple exercise circuit, typically of around about 3 different exercises. So let's have a look at some sample circuits that we've used with people. And one approach might be that we target different muscles within that circuit. So if you look at the top example here, the first exercise is to hit the quads. So we use our single leg squat, loaded enough so that it's tough at 10 reps. Then we might go on to working the glutes to give the quads a chance to recover, perhaps something like some resisted side lying abduction, something like that. Again, tough at 10 reps. Then we move on to work the calf muscle with some calf raises, maybe loaded if necessary, but we want it again to be tough at roughly that 10 rep stage. Now, doing it in this way means that we can work the quads and whilst they're recovering, work the glutes and the calf, and then come back to the start of that circuit to work the quads when they'll be fresh because they've had a chance to recover. And then we could work through that circuit typically 3 times. So we end up doing 3 sets of roughly 10 reps, but loaded enough so that each of those sets is challenging by that 10th rep. Now, I know some people might be listening to this thinking, oh, hang on, this sounds a lot like 3 sets of 10. It is similar to 3 sets of 10, but the key thing here is the intensity. 3 sets of 10 repetition maximum, so you're really struggling to get that 10th rep out, is likely to be effective for building strength in a lot of people. 3 sets of 10, when you're easily doing 10 reps, you know nowhere near fatigue, is probably not so much. Now, if we want to try and target one particular muscle group, perhaps, we can do that within the circuit, but we might want to try and target the different roles of that muscle group. So for example, let's say we wanted to work the hamstring. The hamstring complex has three key roles. It needs to help to flex the knee, it needs to help to extend the hip, and we know it needs to work eccentrically. So we can target the exercises for each of these different roles. So perhaps we start by working on knee flexion with a prone curl against some resistance, maybe resistance band at home if you've got it. Then we move on to hip extension with the single leg bridge, which is more biased around achieving hip extension, perhaps with some load across the abdomen if necessary, to try and make that tough enough. And then we go on to an eccentric exercise like the supine leg curl or possibly the Nordic curl to really try and challenge that hamstring eccentrically. Now, there's research to suggest that exercises with a knee flexion bias may target different parts of the hamstring compared to, say, exercises with a hip extension bias. So it might be that in doing this, we help to target each different part of the hamstring as well as trying to ensure we improve its function in each of these roles. Now, because they're all going to be hamstring-based exercises, we're going to need more rest. So perhaps we have a rest period of maybe 1 to 3 minutes at the end of the circuit before returning to the start of the circuit and working again. Or you could put shorter rest periods, maybe 30 to 60 seconds between each exercise if necessary. It's always got to come down there to individual need. Now, we mentioned the supine leg curl. Some of you may not be familiar with it as an exercise. So let's show you the supine leg curl. So you start by lifting your hips, and as you roll the skateboard out, the hamstrings work eccentrically. You drop the hips to the floor to make the concentric part very easy. So it's very much eccentrically biased. Quite hard to do single leg, so for many people this will be tough at that kind of 10 rep kind of stage. So some food for thought there, some exercise circuits that you could try. And hopefully you can see our reasoning process there in terms of, the order we put these exercises in, how we might combine them, how we work around the fatigue by perhaps working different muscle groups or by using rest in between there. And what I'd encourage you to do is have a think about some exercise circuits you could work with yourself at home. What muscles would you like to get stronger? Perhaps pick 3 exercises designed to really target those muscles and make sure you're loading it up enough so you're getting that fatigue point at roughly around 10 reps. And see what you find it's like at home, because you'll encounter a lot of the problems we find when we're trying to do exercises at home, like finding the time or finding the kit or making sure you feel like the exercise is really targeting where you want it to. And I think if we're wanting to learn about exercise prescription, one of the best ways we can do it is by doing exercises ourselves and learning a lot about those exercises, learning about the problems we face so we can work out what the solutions are for the patients and people that we work with. So I very much would try doing something similar to this, simple exercise circuit at home, and you can build strength and endurance in as little as about 15 minutes, 3 times per week. So let's summarize the key points we've talked about from this short video. Yes, 15 minutes, 3 times a week may be enough to build strength, but intensity is key. We need it to be tough at that sort of 10 rep stage. So we're working somewhere around about 8 to 12 rep max, something like that. Keep it challenging between those rep ranges. And if it's not, we need to get the person to increase the load or increase the range, and they can keep doing this over a number of weeks to get stronger. You may need to ramp up the intensity over time. It takes a bit of trial and error. So if the first session perhaps wasn't enough to get fatigue at around about that 10 reps, they can look to push it a little bit more in the second session, third session, so that they're gradually starting to build up towards the intensity that they need. Obviously, you do need to consider the various training variables here, the order of the exercises, the rest period required for each individual, and the kit that they've got available. These will need to be tweaked to individual need. And while 15-minute circuits 3 times a week may be enough for a lot of people, there are, of course, going to be some people, maybe stronger athletes, elite athletes, that are going to need to train considerably more than that. So please don't see this as a recipe for absolutely everyone. You need to use your judgment with this like we would do with anything. And then finally, if hypertrophy is your goal, you may need higher volumes. So if you're working with someone who's really trying to improve muscle bulk after they've had atrophy, perhaps after an injury, we may need to push towards higher volumes of this strength training to restore that muscle bulk and improve hypertrophy. Okay, so I hope you've found that useful. I'd encourage you to go off and try those exercise circuits. I did one today, really nice one, working with some single leg squats to hit the quads, some nice glutes work in standing that really kind of burnt in the glutes after about 8 to 10 reps, and then some of the supine leg curl stuff to really work my hamstring eccentrically. And I'm kind of still feeling the effects of that now. So it makes you feel good to have a proper workout. When you come out the other end and feel challenged, that's what we want. That's the kind of feeling. If you come out the other end of that circuit and you feel like you could do it 5 or 6 more times, it's probably not tough enough. Okay, well, good luck with your circuits. I hope you're all keeping well. I'll say bye for now.